Tonight I'm going to paint an 8 by 10, and if you read the title, it's painting Alpenglow. And maybe that's a new term to most people. Kind of always made me think, what is Alpenglow anyway? But it's a phenomenon that occurs in the high country, I think for me is where I see it. High mountain peaks at sunset, even in sunrise, but before the sun is fully risen or has risen above the horizon, or after it has fallen below the horizon at sunset, you get this cool reddish orange light and glow on the mountaintops on the opposing side. So if it's sunset, you're on the other side, and it lights up the top of the mountains. It's a kind of cool effect. It's a little bit tough for me to photograph, so I do have a reference photograph I'm going to use tonight, but I'm going to try to recreate that in a painting. I've never really tried to paint it. It's something that is so fleeting I can't really paint in on location and plein air. It's just too goes by too quick. But you can do little color studies and stuff if you're ever out there and you want to capture it. There's really nothing like doing a study on site to get the colors. And you might only have a few minutes to do it, but it's a good way to get some color notes down, take some photographs, and then back in the studio, oftentimes I'll take the photograph and then the plein air piece, even if it's just, way far from finished. And those two things usually will spark something, an emotion back in me that kind of takes me to that place. And, I find, actually, I used the word emotion there. I didn't, not intentionally, but for me, painting is a very emotional experience. So I'm trying to paint the emotion, and that's really what I'm trying to capture. Maybe instead of just the likeness of a scene, oftentimes it's the emotion that I felt, trying to repaint that. So I really enjoy being in my studio in the wintertime. I do a lot of plein air painting during the summer, and that's great. But I kind of find that when I'm back in the studio and I'm painting larger versions of these plein air pieces, I'm trying to paint the emotion, get the feeling that I felt out there. And a lot of times I'll abandon the photo reference and just use my plein air study to get the painting started to begin with. And then after not too long, in fact, I will find that I'm not even looking at either a photo reference or my plein air study. And we'll just be painting, responding to the painting, creating that feeling, that sense of being there and the emotion that I want to convey in the painting. So anyway, that's a little bit on a tangent, but my photo reference tonight, I did not do a painting from. I've painted a lot in our mountains when this effect is going on. So let's begin here. I'll talk for another minute here, but I'm going to switch the screen and show you what we're looking at. So tonight, my reference there in the left-hand corner, this is up by Steamboat Springs, Colorado, a beautiful place. And this is maybe 10 miles out of town, kind of northwest of Steamboat. And you can see a little bit of that light on the top of the mountain there. So in general, the colors in the landscape there are kind of cool blues and greens. And then you've got this light on the mountain. Might be a tough effect. I don't know. I'm not sure how the painting will come out. What's new, right? But this has really been a good experience, I think, painting live. I'm not afraid to try something I haven't done before. And, I don't want to just keep painting the same sunset scene for you guys every week. So we'll mix it up. This scene actually is a mix of snow and not. So last week was a summer scene, but we've got a little snow here. As always, I use the photo reference as a jumping off point. I'm not trying to copy it, but get ideas. I'm probably not going to put the road, or I know I'm not going to put the road in there. It's going to be about framing up that mountain and trying to capture that light in a way that's convincing. If you look at my canvas here, it's already stained. I pre-toned the canvas tonight because for a couple of reasons. This is an universal primed linen surface, and I wanted to get a medium tone ground onto it so that my paint will not slide around as much on just the raw surface. So that little layer of kind of a, medium brown helps the paint adhere and gives me a little bit of a toothy surface, I think. I don't know how to explain it necessarily, but I feel the difference when I'm painting onto this versus just raw linen or even oil primed linen. This is universal primed, but oil primed linen is much slicker yet, and this will help take that slickness off of the surface. The other reason I put a mid-tone on here is that I really want I want to I want a surface that allows me to build that light effect on the mountain there. And these are some cool lights on top, and I think if I start with a little bit darker surface here, I might get the effect that I want. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to switch microphones and move over there. Give me 1 second and we'll begin. So I was working on some paintings this week, and if I get enough of a pool of a color going and I don't want to waste it, I'll use my palette knife and scrape it up, and I'll put it out on the side like that. Now notice I've got two. What I recommend if you're going to do this is just, when you group those puddles of paint together that you're mixing, you've got warms and cools, and they're probably already grouped on your palette. So what I do is I try to scrape my warm colors together and put that pile. So I've got a light, warm kind of flesh or skin tone here. And then I've got the same thing for the blues. The benefit of that, especially when you're plein air painting, is you already have a neutral gray in a warm and a cool that you can use to modify mixtures. So that's another bonus little tip there. I think I'm going to use bristle brushes to start tonight and kind of scratch in some of the colors. I've got a couple here that are rosemary, hog's hair, and they are both number 6s. So I will start with those and get some color going down here. And I'm looking at my reference here. Now one thing I might do just to start off is I'm going to take another little brush here, and I'm going to take some of that warm, what I would call mud. I mean, a lot of painters will call this kind of a muddy color. It's just a grayed down warm. And I'll put a little of that on my brush, and I'm just going to pop a bit of that into this space where that Alpenglow is going to be. Why did I do that? Well, I think what it does is it's by far not, it's not white. I'll put a little bit of white down by it. It's a light value, but you can see that it's still, quite a bit darker in value than white. It leaves me some room at the end if I really want to punch this up with a lighter, brighter yellow or orange or something. I've got room left to do that. I'll just put a little bit of that there. You probably can't even tell. But the other thing that this does is by putting in some of maybe your most chromatic piece or your lightest light, early on helps you build the relationships. You know that you've got to build the rest of the painting value-wise around that so that piece of light still works. I don't want this painting to get really dark, but a lot of that's in kind of cool shadow. So I'm going to put that little spot of light in there now, and that'll just remind me that I need the rest of it to be dark enough so that light looks lit, but not so dark that you can't see into it. Hope that's helpful, understandable. So I think right now I'm going to just thinly go into some of my dark greens here, because I know I need those to be dark and I don't want any whites in that. So I'm going to start my, let's see, I'm using some of this Galkid gel tonight, squeezed out as my medium. And I've got some really nice dark trees here. I'm gonna be kind of scratchy with this tonight. That's why I chose this brush. I don't really want to lift the the underground too much, so maybe I can't be too scratchy with it on second thought. But again, I'm going to just kind of work on my big shapes here, and with the bristles of my brush, kind of get a little texture in there. Not trying to copy, again, my reference, but you know, just in general, get a jumping off point here. And let's see, so I want, like, there's this bank of trees here, and I want it to end over way left of center. I don't want that to be you know, I don't want the end of this bank of trees to be in the middle. Everything, all the angles coming together in one spot. That would look unnatural. And I don't want all these little greens to be equally spaced. So I'm thinking about all that kind of stuff now. We always have to be thinking about that. And I'll just put a little bit more of this green. It'll be a mix of the green trees and you know, some of those, I guess they're probably aspen that don't have any leaves on them anymore. I'm going to kind of go with a big tree shape here on the left. This helps keep the viewer in the painting. And I'm just going to be thin about this and just kind of get it in, but I need to paint that background mountain. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, because a lot of this I'll be painting over. And then how far into the foreground do I want this to come? Well, I'm going to kind of go by feel here. But by bringing the base of it down lower than these, and it's taller, you know that that's closer into the foreground. And I made it a little different color, you'll notice there. Okay. So I think I'll move into the blues a little bit more here. And maybe there's some cad red light in there as well. And I want to keep this pretty thin too. This is going to seem a little dark unless I scratch it in pretty thinly here. But what it's going to do, I hope, is give me a little bit of a base then, a nice dark base to come in with some lighter tones on top of that. And I'm allowing these colors to kind of blend in together. Notice I'm using the side of my bristle brush also. And I've kind of got this, you know, forehand overhand grip on it, rather than you know, trying to use like a pencil grip, like holding it like a pencil. That just ensures that I stay looser with this and don't really bog down too much on it. Now it actually feels like I'm being a little bit precious with this, honestly, but I'm going to keep going with it, because I guess I'm the one that'll have to deal with the consequences. But see, I'm kind of getting some neat textures here, almost like a watercolor effect a little bit. And I'm going right into that tree, obliterating some of that. So you guys, some ask questions. How has your week been, everybody? Have a good week. I can't believe how fast the weeks go by now that I'm doing a live stream. It's unbelievable. Everything's good here in Colorado. We've had a cold snap, so I'm ready for that to be gone, but it's supposed to be in the 50s again pretty soon. Let's see. Yeah, you know, I like winter for about 6 or 8 weeks maybe, and then I'm kind of on to other things. I'm ready to go to Mexico. So this foreground, I really didn't think through what I want to do in the foreground. There's some sagebrush and stuff in here. I'm probably just going to keep that just keep, I'm going to put some indication of maybe some shadow side of some of the sagebrush. Kind of weird to see sagebrush in the mountains, maybe. If you're not from here, we do have this kind of, I don't know if it's really sagebrush, but a lot of this kind of low scrub. Pretty common. I like it because in the painting, you know, I think the painting I did last week, I used that, and I can get kind of this heathery blue element into the paintings, which is nice. A nice break to mix up all the greens. Let's see what's going on over here. I think I'm going to put some more, probably some more trees in here at a distance. Okay. So I think at this point I can start maybe adding in some white. Actually, maybe I'm going to go a little bit more to the green side just for a minute and put down some of the green of the field here, especially in the foreground in a transparent. Oh, so I was just talking about, you know, deciding when I'm going to add some white in here. And the reason is that white is opaque. So I'm trying to get these colors in here. Right now are transparent colors. I'm making them even more transparent by using a scratchy brush and some medium. You can do both of those things, but the transparency, I don't know, can add a little bit of a depth, especially in your shadows. It's nice if your shadows are transparent because you kind of, your eye and your gaze kind of goes into that shape. And if you are, when you paint your lights are always going to contain white in oil painting. And so if your lights have white, then your in your shadows kind of are transparent, then you have a better shot of giving the feeling of light. And a lot of lights, if you go look at a Rembrandt portrait, for example, his highlights on this cheek or whatever he's painting, like his self-portraits and stuff, these are really thick impasto whites that sit on top of the whole painting. Yeah, they're fascinating to look at. So, and by building this kind of structure out with all transparents right now, I can paint over the top of that. It's not going to contaminate other colors very easily. I can wipe it off easily. There's a lot of benefits to just trying to stay transparent as long as you can. And I've kind of got all one value right now, so I'm going to be building on top of that. And as I go back, then I get kind of a more pure blue in the mountains here. A cleaner blue. And I have a drawing on there. You can see that, I guess. So I'm trying to start paintings each week a little differently for you all too, because that's a common question. If you're new to painting, some of you have been painting for a while, I know. So, but there isn't one way to start a painting. You might find one you prefer, but try different ways, and it's really the painting that speaks to me and really tells me what I should probably be doing for how to start it. If I should put thin washes of color down to begin with, or if I should, block in, heavy color shapes, or, stay with transparents and work out a thin plan to begin with. All of that's valid. But some things don't work for certain paintings, so you gotta watch that. Momo Paint says that you like the effect of the transparency. It's kind of neat just like that even. It is. It gives a nice surface quality, adds dimensionality right from the start. But it's hard to, you got to do something to build that value difference on there. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this brush down and aside without any white on it. I can probably use that later. And grab a clean brush. And now I'm going to start to make a pile with some whites. I think I might just come up and actually do my sky right now. I'm going to come over here, just grab some of that pile of cool blue that I had. My cool mud, I should say. And this bank of clouds that's right above the mountain, that's what I'm trying to go for here. And I'm going to put some medium in that. By putting the medium in here and scratching it on, I'm going to be able to keep that kind of semi-transparent as well. I need to find the value here, and so it's lighter than the dark side of the mountain, but it is darker than the Alpenglow light, if you're following. I think this is about right here. And I built kind of a shape here. I like the shape that was in the photo reference, so that's fine. I'm going to start with that. And the reason I'm putting medium in here and scraping it on, scratching it on right now is I hope that this will set up a little bit and then I can come back on top of it and paint. So the last few weeks, what I've done is I've started kind of from scratch, right, on my paintings. And then I get them to maybe 85 or 95, 90 to 95%, I would say. But then after I'm done with the broadcast, I start to look at what do I need to do to make this a finished painting? And that's a really slow process time-wise, but maybe not a lot of painting. It's more thinking. So what I wanted to do today maybe was get a little further ahead and maybe I can speed the surface drying up a little bit so that I can show you a little bit more of that final painting that happens. Oil paints too seem to, sometimes they'll dry a little bit, or when you first paint, they look vibrant and like they've got enough punch. And then once they dry a little bit, the transparency maybe kicks in or something happens and they dull out a little bit. So oftentimes after I've let a painting sit for a while, I'll need to come back in and maybe reinforce some of those areas of color punch or value punch, that kind of thing. Okay, so that bank of clouds there is kind of cooler. And then the sky behind it, which also has a lot of moisture in it, the way it looks there, is darker. So I'm going to try to approximate that color. And that background kind of moves from a violet on the left to a warmer tone on the right. Try to angle my arm around the camera here. If you look at like a George Inness painting, a famous landscape painter, turn of the century, late 1800s into, I'm not sure when he died, but you'll see on those, a lot of his work, he's got a warm undertone that's been put down. And you can see a lot of that, like a burnt sienna, for example, that's coming through and really kind of thin layers of paint on top of that. So I just, as I'm seeing this, it kind of reminded me of the look and feel of that surface of a George Inness. So look up his work if you're not familiar with it. some really nice scenes. So as I'm going over to the right here, I'm going to go ahead and lighten that up and start to add some warmer color in it too. So I just grab my warmer gray, leftover pile. And what's kind of nice about that, I see, when you paint, you know, and you follow your drawing, whether you're drawing the human figure or a landscape or you're painting, as you get in and you actually start painting, you see all these relationships that weren't really at first so obvious, but it's really neat. So, you know, I see this light in the sky, and it's going to give me an opportunity to echo the light in the Alpenglow. All right, so, you know, what are we into this, 15 minutes or so and of painting, and it's blocked in. And with that medium, hopefully that's set up a little bit there. And I'm going to go ahead and start more of what I would call the direct painting here. So I'm going to switch to a different brush. And I think for, when you paint mountains like this that have snow on them. Oh, sorry, I'm in that mode of thinking and painting at the same time, or trying to talk. Hi, Kat, welcome. Glad you joined us. So when you're trying to paint a mountain that has snow on it, I kind of find it easier for me maybe to paint the dark in there, and then with a dry brush effect almost put the snow on. Let's see, get my drawing here. That seems pretty dark. I might go a little lighter with that. And a little purple. So what would well, you know what, I like the purple. I'm going to push the purple a little bit, in fact, because I want it to be kind of frosty cold back there against that light. So that's just fine. Now I want to make this edge a little interesting here. And I'm putting down the paint. The brush is very, let's see, nearly flat to the surface. Not sure if that's parallel or perpendicular, but anyway, very flat at a low angle to the surface because I don't want to pick up a lot of that, that underpainting that I put on, or that scratchy layer of paint I just put in. Just want to lay the new stuff on top. So in between, I'm reloading up and putting a few more marks down. And I can adjust these all later, but I'm just trying to get in some of this color right now. And then these marks hopefully will set up a little bit, meaning that they, kind of coagulate, I guess, on the surface. It's really not what's happening, I don't think, but the paint gels up and grabs hold of the surface there a little bit. And the other thing is, I grabbed a little of that white, didn't I? Alpenglow creep. It's all right. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say. It's all right. So remember my 70% rule. I get an area and I think, all right, it looks 70% there, and I'll move on to something else. All right, so as I move forward to that next mountain in there, it's darker and it's got more green into it and a little bit of ochre. So I'm just building on these initial piles here and starting to use my colors to modulate and get to the right color temperature and dark to light value. It's still pretty blue there, actually. I'm going to keep my, I want to keep my, my greens for some of those trees and as we get closer to the foreground here. And that's pretty saucy paint there. I just put one little mark down and it, you know, it just flowed right off the brush because I have a little too much medium in there. It's no big deal though. And I'm just referring back to my photograph here. And so I'm looking and I definitely, it's darker and it's greener. I might need to come back later and put a little bit of, you know, maybe a lighter blue or a haze kind of on there to set it behind the trees that are going to be in front of it. So we'll see. I did make more of a violet right now that I'm laying down. As I get over here, I'm going to have the trees in front of it. I can get away with that. A little bit darker and cooler color will make those trees in the foreground really pop out. But I still need them to be kind of quiet in the composition here. Let's see, and I think the mountain on the left there has a little more red and alizarin in there. Just feeling that. Definitely darker. See a shape there. And all these little scratchy lines and stuff, they kind of add to the mystery of it, don't they? You don't know, well, wait, is that shape or is it the shape behind it? The trick is to be able to finish a lot of this painting and not overpaint those things. So see when I'm dragging my brush here, I'm even pushing it on sometimes just to get a really a little skip in the line almost, or in the paint application. Let it just catch the little bumps and stuff on the canvas here, and then that allows the underpainting to show through. It's easy actually to just kind of overpaint, to put something down and then overpaint it. I still do it all the time. And I think, well, you know, why did I even bother putting that down if I was just going to paint over it? Come on, Scott, think about your strategy, you know, work smarter, which is a challenge and something I really need to do, especially when I'm painting in like plein air competitions where time is really of the essence. Trying to get that one thing on, the right color, the right value, one and done is kind of a tough thing to do. Okay, we're getting it. It's starting to come to life here. Okay, so what do I want to try next? I think I'm going to keep building out those two mountains for right now. So I'm going to go to in the upper left, or I'm sorry, upper right hand corner. You can see where that mountain is in, catching some of the light up here. It's still a dark shape against the sky if you squint your eyes and you look at my photo reference. You'll see that. But relative to the darker part of that mountain, it's pretty, it's lighter. So I'm trying to find that. I'm going to go into this warm pile of my leftover paint from last time because it's already grayed down. I don't need to, if I go into a cadmium or something like that, then I need to probably gray it down. And I'm going to just try to bring some of that effect in here. And I cheated a little bit on the shape of that mountain because I want to have just some interest in there. Add a little more red into here. And then the way the light hits this is going to help kind of define the form of that mountain as well. Probably need to do a little lighter in there. Yeah, this has a very almost kind of a, well, an Ines feel to it, or even maybe a, yeah, I don't know, kind of an old world feeling to the paint application right now. I kind of like it. But there can be a danger when you try to always sneak up on a painting like this. Instead of painting it boldly and directly, when you're saving your effect and sneaking up to build it, that can cause some problems too sometimes. You know, especially if you're painting plein air and your light's changing, you may never have the time to get to the effect you were looking for before the light changes. So you got to watch that. All right, let's see here. I think I'll put in a little bit of these trees. They're really a cool white. Maybe that's too, something like that. So see how I'm really utilizing these two puddles of a warm and a cool. It really helps me a lot quickly get to mixtures. Okay, so I'm just going to try to put a little bit of indication of these in here. Just gently. They seem a little bright right now, but I think I might be okay with them as I lighten the rest of the landscape up here. And then I think probably it's worthwhile go ahead and start to put in some of these foreground colors. I'm not sure what that foreground, how I'm going to get to that mixture, so I'm just grabbing a little bit of everything here. Find the right value. It is kind of, yeah, it's like a blue-green, a light blue-green. So I'm going to see if this looks, how this looks right here. I want a band of it across the middle. And that seems a little too blue, so I'm just going to grab a little green and mix into that. I can just move over into this green pile, maybe a little ochre also. I think that's probably a little better. So see, it's a video about painting Alpenglow, but it's really about setting the whole stage for the whole deal, isn't it? I could just do a demo on just painting that little piece of light there. Maybe just a quick painting of that area of the mountain, a little study. That'd be all right too. But I may as well make a painting if I can. You can see how it's all built up. So just in the distance there, I'm kind of going with these horizontal strokes as I'm coming around to the front, foreground. Then I'm using some brushwork that kind of mimics the shrubbery, keeping that in mind. Now remember, I put these little areas of dark in that were the base of some of these little shrubs here. So I'm going to try to not lose that and keep some of that splotchy, organic looking, whatever. side of your brush. Really good at doing that too. And I can kind of design my foreground. It's a little bit like I did last weekend, or last week in this. And then as it goes back in space, it's going to go more to the blue side. So I've kind of got this line way out here that's off in the distance here, so I'm going to add a little more, violet and blue to that. And look at that. All of a sudden I feel three-dimensionality to it. I mean, I kind of have a vision in my head, which you don't. So I have an advantage in that, but I can see kind of the development of the shapes in the foreground taking me into the middle ground and ultimately the background there. Okay, so I think at this point I can probably start working on my trees a little bit. I can just use the same brush. And yeah, I'm going to make a green, starting with an ochre. I want this to be a really muted green because it's quiet in the foreground, and it's going to be maybe a little on the cooler side here. I can cool it down with more blue. I can go with the cool red, which is alizarin. Those are the kind of things I'm thinking of. And I think that doesn't quite have enough punch to it. Maybe it needs to be a little darker. I don't want to make it too warm either. I made it a little warm here, I think, with the red just now. So I'll add a little more blue and bring that down. Okay. And I'll just get some of these trees in here for right now. I can already tell I need to be darker. I think that'll work pretty well. Bring a little yellow in there just to get my green back. And some of these little guys here. And I don't really need to paint trees necessarily. I just need to get some shapes in here. And I'm changing my color every few brush strokes, just a little bit, so that it doesn't all look too homogeneous, boring. And go back to my reference a little bit there. Okay, it's pretty dark right now. Got to pull out of that a little bit. What I'll do then is maybe in the foreground here, work on that tree. I had a little white in there, darn it. And this tree is going to, I'll put in some of my darks here. I'm just making this tree up. I can't really see the reference. It's kind of tiny. So I'll just get some of this scratchiness of the tree in there. I'll come back and paint into the sky later on that one, I think. And then, so what's my lighter green look like there? I'll just mix it next to the dark shadow color. It's going to have a little white in there. And a little cooler on the green. See if that's enough. Yeah, that might be. All right, what is the general kind of shape of this? These branches. And I can even go a little lighter and a little brighter on some of the branches that are in the foreground here. Or facing me, I should say, in the tree. And then that gives the three-dimensionality, like that one coming out at you maybe is a little bit closer type of thing. Now I've just really been pretty loose there and making fun little marks all over the place. And some of those will stay, and then some of them I'll clean up as I go. Okay. Well, I think what I'm going to do is work on that mountain now. So I think if I build out that mountain, then everything else will kind of come into. It'll be a little clearer to me what I need to do to the rest of the elements to finish off the painting. So let's work on that a little bit. So I'm going to start by mixing my snow. And I have a little bit of a phthalo blue here on the right. Phthalo blue is a nice kind of cold blue, and I sometimes will use it when I'm trying to get that effect in that cold snow. It's somehow a little bit different than I can get with ultramarine or cobalt blue. So I see some of that kind of over here. Now look at how bright that is. And I don't want it that bright because it's almost as bright as this guy here, value-wise. So I'm going to come in with a couple of darker colors here and try to just bring that pile down in value a little bit. And I added quite a bit to it, but it's still pretty bright. I have a lot of white in that brush too, so I'm kind of squeegeeing it out there. Now remember, when you dip into a strong color and you don't want to ruin your mixture, you can just dab some of it off on the side and mix it in, and then pull more of it in as you need to. Give myself some more white in there, see how that works. But notice when I put, this is kind of a, it's far from white, but it looks so bright when I put it down on that dark panel. But I see that is, I think that's about right, because I want that snow to be lighter than the cloud behind here, darker than the light that's going to be on the mountain there. So that's my test. I say in my mind it's got to be lighter than that and darker than that, and I just mix it until I find it, and that's what I go with. Now I just need to make it kind of an interesting shape of snow here. I'm going to let some of the snow run, or the paint on my brush run out. I'm not reloading, and then that lets me go into this blue and cover some of the area but not others. So I get that kind of look of snow that's between rocks and such. And the trick there is to just get it and then quit screwing around with it. And you may need to wipe your brush off in between, that's fine. I'm not really finding it as a problem right now. That little blue initial undertone that I put on there seems to be, holding on to the surface pretty well. Well, let's see, maybe I will add a little variation to this color with the phthalo blue. Some areas you want a nice thick stroke of the color on there, and then others you're going to want just a kind of a thin general mark of snow. And it looks like this is kind of, I'm going to go real gentle here. Kind of cover that background mountain and set it off into the back there. I probably won't need to touch that one again now. Little snow here. And I'm holding my brush like that. So I'm, when you're painting like this, you got to think about, okay, I need the snow color. I need the snow color in shadow. So mix that up and know what you're painting. And then when you're done with that, you say, all right, well, I need the snow color in light. Because see, I've got both here. So for the light to read as light, I've got to get the shadow correct. Because there's no light without the darkness. And I could start to turn the form a little bit here on the mountains. There's going to be some slight differences in the blue as it goes over the top, the crest of the mountain there. But I'm not, I'll come back to that. So, the Alpenglow. Well, I think what I'm seeing here is I'm looking at my image. I'm seeing light that's hitting both the mountain and the mountain that doesn't have snow on it, and areas of the sunlit snow there, and so that those areas are really bright. And I'm going to go to Trekell.com. This is a Legion number 6, and it's a filbert, so it's rounded at the top there. And it's a soft synthetic. These Trekell brushes, I think I'm saying it correctly, are pretty good. They're good value. They seem to hold up really well. Yeah, and they're here in the US. Not really stuck on any one brand, but I really don't like, I guess, when I buy a brush and it doesn't hold up. That's a bummer. So what I'm going to try to do here for this effect is, just like a spotlight, you've got the light hitting this mountain, and some of it around the edges is going to be more muted. Well, that's not the right word. Let me think of the best word for this. When you're looking directly at the highlight, it's almost washed out. It's a floodlight effect or a spotlight effect. But as the form turns, then the light falls off, and you actually get an area with a little more chroma in it. Chroma meaning the color. So I'm going to start here with a more chromatic orange color, and I see that up here, and I have a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm going to take a little bit of that off and see if I can't kind of integrate that color gently into the top area that's a little blue. And then what's going to happen is as that light falls off of the form, it turns into shadow and the colors kind of start to mix. You have areas then that aren't in the light, so some of that dark cool. So that's what I'm trying to put in there right now, and I've got a kind of an orange red. I'm going to add a little more red to that because I kind of like that, just because I like it. And that's the great thing about painting, have fun with it. If I followed, that reference is kind of cool, blown up. You're seeing it pretty small. But if I just copied that, I think it's still kind of lackluster in color in that. So for what it's worth. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the main shape here, and I'm going to pick up some of that original color I put down, and I blended that in. And I'm going to just put some of this value around in little nooks and crannies that might have been catching light. I can't really see this in my image because it's tiny, but I know it happens. You've got a three-dimensional mountain. Some of those areas are catching light directly, and half tones and all that great stuff. So I'm going to vary the temperature and kind of put some of those marks in there. This is where you can have fun, make it a little exciting to look at there. Some calligraphy in your brush strokes and some thicker paint. And then, so really I'm kind of all in this like deeper halftone, deeper value halftone right now. And, but I'm getting ready here to put in some of that brightest washed out light. And what does it do as it falls off on the bottom? I really can't tell. I'm going to go in full gusto here with my bright. And I'm going to add a little medium to this too, because whites take forever to dry. That painting colorful snow demo that I did a couple of weeks ago still isn't dry. If you were wondering when I'm going to post that image, it's half dry, so some of the darks in there look really dark and kind of dead. And then, so anyway, taking a photograph of it right now is kind of fruitless. You won't get the full effect of it. But look at that. Wow. That is like a spotlight on the mountain. That's what I want. And you really get that effect when you put, when you put that bed of kind of a darker, muted, but chromatic, warm values down there first. Then when I put these lightest lights in here, they really tend to pop. Okay, I don't want to overdo it. I may come back in with a nice, even a little bit whiter white. I've got a very warm yellow. And if I go pure white, then that gets kind of washed out. Now, I think toward the bottom, what I want to do is I want to change that as the bottom of this light shape comes into play. I'm going to go with my cooler red here, the alizarin crimson. And I'm going to put a little line of that here. Just to maybe indicate where that is getting, where that light's falling off. We'll see if it works out or not. I don't really see it in my reference. But don't ever let that stop you. If you have a hunch with color, color you can really play with, have a lot of fun. And do things that you don't necessarily see, but that make a stunning painting. So have fun with that. And as I go up to this edge here, putting a darker, little cooler bit in here to indicate the top of that mountain, turning away from the light. But wow, right? Look at the statement that makes. And I'm kind of defining the form here with the way that light patch is curving. I like that. I'm going to leave it just like that, actually. Don't touch it. Got to keep telling myself. Okay, I'm going to clean this brush off, and I'm going to go into the snow that's not in light. Because there's some of that right at the base of that light shape, and if I get this correct, it'll look good. You can kind of tell that the snow, it's still a bank of snow there. I like little dots and dashes. I find that's kind of fun, especially when I'm finishing up a painting later. If I've started it plein air and, didn't finish it or abandon it, I wasn't really feeling it for some reason in the field. Sometimes I'll revive that. I realize that I just needed, maybe I just needed a little more, be a little more bold. With some color shapes, dots and dashes, and just have fun with it. Don't make it such a literal painting. I kind of really enjoy doing that. So now I'm going to come back in on top of that bed of snow over here that I thought was too light to begin with. And now that I've put that little darker value down there, I think I have room to make it in some areas a little bit lighter. And what that'll do is that brings that shape a little bit forward compared to if I did that over here on this little mountain, that little mountain that's way off in the distance now would come really forward, really come forward. And I don't want that to happen. But you get a lot of this kind of pop and dramatic effect here because there's a lot of that dark undertone still coming through. And this really has a lot of drama to it. I like it. And the brush strokes are, well, at least for now, I like it. But the brush strokes are, they're rough. They've got energy to them and life to them. So they're not all blended together. They're just layered on one another. I think that's an important thing to learn. I'll also keep that dark line at the top of the mountain there because it really sets that apart from that cloud bank behind there. That cloud bank's kind of actually cool the way it is right now. But I think somehow I need to lighten. And I'm going to wait on the sky. I'm going to leave the sky as it is because it almost could work. And I'm going to mess around with the rest of it here and then see if I need to do anything with the sky. Sometimes the skies are really nice if they're thin, kind of thinly laid down, and you can see multiple layers through them. That adds a nice dimension to the sky without having an impasto thick paint jumping off the canvas. It lets that sky sit back rather than compete with some of these thicker impasto paintbrush marks on the mountain. Looking awesome. Thanks, Momo. I appreciate that. How you guys doing? Everybody awake? I'm having fun painting this one. I got to figure out this foreground, though, don't I? So I'm looking at my painting reference, and I squint down, and, I think this foreground here needs to be lighter yet. So let's see. I had a pile going on right here that was that color. That kind of blue, green. color there. See if I can approximate that. Cat is enchanted, right on. Good to hear it. Hope you feel good tonight. It's cold here in Colorado, but it's going to be sunny pretty soon, I guess. Next couple of days, so I'm looking forward to that. And but I find when it's cold like this, using like an old man in a cabin, I want to go to bed and cozy up and close out the world. I twice this week I went to bed fairly early and thought I would, stay up, and I'm always looking at real estate and painting books and you name it. I kind of hate to go to sleep because I feel like I'm giving up on the day, and the day was a gift. And, so I try to make the most of it, I guess. And, so twice this week I thought, one night my eyes were kind of stinging, and I thought I'll just close my eyes for a minute because they were stinging when I go out in the cold, And then, I woke up 9 hours later, which really isn't like me. But I blame it on the cold weather. So what I'm doing right now is I'm putting in some tops to these sagebrush, and I'm using some brush calligraphy. And I hope that you get what I'm saying there. But, I'm just trying to getting some brush marks and energy in each of these brush strokes here. And I'm changing the color up a little bit so that it's more fun also. Because you can have the same value tone, and then you change the color up a little bit, and all of a sudden you've got, separation and a different shape going on. So that's a good way to do it. And I might just make this kind of, why not? Just almost just draw an outline to it. I kind of like that. And I'm seeing this color echoes some of this color back in here. I've got some good color harmonies happening. These are the kind of things I'll typically do later on a painting. Just have the fun with it. But I don't want these warm tones I don't want those warm tones in the middle and background, so I need to make my mixture a little cooler. But right here in the foreground, I'm going to go a little bit darker, and I'm going to see if I can, that's not dark enough, add the shadow side or the underbelly of these little shrubs. Underbelly, where do I come up with this stuff? I don't know. But I want this cool, and I actually want I want a cool warm. How do you do that? I don't know. It's kind of interesting. It's a little too red, but I kind of like the brush stroke and the feeling of it. That's kind of fun. So I'll just add a little more blue as I go back and keep doing that because I kind of like the look of that. And it's still pretty thin and scratchy. I mean, you'll notice when you do something like this that if you go thin and scratchy and then you put down a bold mark, it's really going to stand out. So you'll have to decide how much of that you're willing to do. But that's also a great way to have your center of interest here, really thin, scratchy, and then those nice thick highlights on the mountain there. I mean, this really reads to me already as a, the feeling that I had when I was there. When I talked about painting the emotion, I'm feeling it from the painting now. So now just in a gut feel sense, I know I'm on the right track. Now, so this blue I've been putting down, I want it to be a little lighter. I could go right into white, but I already have a lighter blue in this, discard pile. So I'm just going to use some of that. And dots and dashes, just trying to add variety. Sometimes those little shadow shapes and everything is everything that you need. I think I still need some definition in here, though. I'm probably gonna need more something in this foreground here. It's too undefined. But moving on, 70%. So what else could I paint? Well, let's go ahead and I'll work on these mountains a little bit more. What do I have in that left one? I've kind of got this color here. I've got green on this brush. It is a greenish blue, greenish bluish red, yellowish grayish. I'm sorry, I'm just kidding. It's a blue-green with a little bit of ochre to it. And that's a favorite question of students is what color did you use to get that? And you just get a feel for it. You get a color that's close and then you're not sure and you just say, all right, is it warmer than that, cooler than that? And then you choose a warmer or cooler pigment. And you can also say, is it lighter or darker? So if it's cooler and darker, maybe I go for my ultramarine because that one color does both. Maybe it doesn't need to be blue, the color, but it needs to be warmer and darker. And so blue gets me part of the way there. Okay, I'm just testing this here. And I think I've got my shadow color pretty good there. So I'm going to go into the ochre and a little bit of the white. Try to get some of the, I guess it's areas that aren't really just trees. And I'm going to dry brush drag some of that in. Trying to look at my reference. And some of these vertical strokes can give a feeling of some trees. Maybe I'll go a little more green. This is kind of dangerous though, like I've said every time probably, is that the yellow falls out in the color. The wavelength of it just doesn't have what it needs to make it to your eye from a long distance, and so you lose the yellow out of a mix. Well, green is a mix of yellow and blue, so if you take the yellow out, you're left with blue. But anyway, my point here is that, orange and red, they have a little more staying power than yellow to get to your eye. So if you're painting something in the distance and you don't want it really to come too forward, think about using something other than yellow. You can lighten it and warm it with something other, maybe it's the cool red. Now that's starting to read like a hill. Pretty good. One of these days I'll fix my squeaky chair. I was listening back to one of my videos and I realized how much you guys endure with my squeaky chair. It's kind of authentic though, isn't it? You feel like you're right here with me in the studio. Haley Ruthven says she can already tell this is going to be one of her favorites. Looks beautiful. Thank you, my darling daughter, Haley. I got some pretty good fam that always tunes in and cheers me on. I sure appreciate it. They're waiting for me to blow one of these probably. No, they're not. They're completely behind me, so lucky guy. All right, on this side, the light's hitting this top a little bit, so I warmed it up. I put a little red and a little orange. And but those are kind of dark, you know. One thing to keep in mind when you're using red is that red looks bright and it stands out and it jumps out at you in a picture because of its chroma, but its value is very dark. So I'll say that again. Red is has a very dark value, even though chromatically it packs a lot of punch. So if I put down a field of a mid-range blue color, a big field of it, and then I put a dot of red right in the middle, well, that red's going to just stand out. You're going to say, wow, there's red there, obviously. But if you turn that image to black and white and look at it, you're barely going to see the red because they're going to be the same value. Try it. I'm not lying. Okay, so what I've done here is my concept is I'm trying to add light to the trees at the top of this hill, and that light is falling off and getting darker and darker as I go down, because it's a soft transition. If you look at my image there, it's a really soft transition. So I'm trying to mimic that a little bit here. George is watching too. Awesome. I bet George is getting a lot out of this. George is my grand cat. So see, you guys are learning all about my family. You know Hershey. He's banished to the outside of the room so he doesn't bark. George is my grand cat. It's older than I am. We love our animals. All right, as I'm going down this hill, I'm going more to the alizarin and the blues. And that's making a really nice transition here. I don't know if that's getting picked up so much on the video, but it's a really pleasing transition here. And I'm adding, so I've got this whole base of value in the tone already in this mountain, so I don't have to do a lot there. Just putting in these colors on top of that adds a lot of visual interest. That's coming along. This painting has something. I can tell. It's got mood, it's got drama, it's quiet. Yeah. You know, and I'm not saying that to brag or anything. I hope that doesn't sound boastful. But you know, when I paint, it takes a while to get a feel for the painting, and you know if it's going to turn into something that if you're going to be able to execute the vision that you had. So I'm not trying to be boastful, just at a certain point, you know if you're going to be able to deliver that concept that you had and get the feeling. These aren't all slam dunks. I don't know, maybe someday I'll get to that point, but yeah. So I'm adding some kind of this violet that I had a pool of on this side, and trying to cool down and lighten the edge of this mountain right here. Yeah, Kat says it's important for us all to know when we've hit our mark. I think that I agree. Well, it says you got to have a mark to begin with, right? So that's an important part. Make sure you go in with some intention and you know what you're trying to do. Yeah, I somehow want to lighten that edge up a little bit more, but I want to be very careful. I don't want to make that pop too much. But I do need some separation there. So if I'm getting too light in the foreground and I'm worried about that, then maybe I need to go darker in the spot behind it. I don't think I need to do that right now, but I'll just tickle that line a little bit there so it's... There we go. Okay. These are kind of bugging me, honestly. These little white trees here. When I scratch out, I'm going right back to the surface of the panel, so that's not really helping me either. Let's see what to do about those. I think I just need a value that's not so light. So it's kind of a ochre knocked back with some violet. What am I doing? There we go. I'm kind of messing up my piles here. But anyway, it's not so white. Let's see if that fits in. Yeah, that could work a little bit. I like that little bank of trees there. Kat says she's playing armchair artist, yelling her ideas at the screen like watching a football game. Maybe it's good I can't hear you then, huh? It'd be all in my head. It's funny, some ideas come well after it's finished and you're like, why didn't I do that? But Kat, I know you're probably like, when is he going to do that thing that I've been waiting for since the beginning? Am I wrong? So I'm giving a little three-dimensionality to these by putting a little bit lighter light toward the front. And that feels right. This is a finesse thing. It goes slow. A lot of times it goes slow. I trained you well, huh, Kat? Good. All right, I'm going to mix up a green here, try to go into those background trees. But see, at this point, I know I've got a painting out of this because I made that mountain. I mean, this was all about painting Alpenglow, and I've got that. So the rest of this is a matter of how much do I paint these other things? Just enough without competing with the main character, or the main character in the play here. That's an all right analogy. And so, the trick is don't overpaint some of these things here. So I'm just going to try to do the marks I need, and that's it. It never works out that way. Don't put that much pressure on yourself, but you can try for it. Sometimes it does, even though I said it never does. But like these trees back there, this is a real finesse thing to see how much I want them. I want the viewer to know they're pine trees and they're in front, but I also don't want them to just jump out at us here. And some of these can even just be vertical strokes. Some of them need to be darker and some of them need to be lighter. Whoop, got a little bit light there. Punch up my green. And you know what? I maybe just need to have some thicker paint on this to make it really stand out. I need some differentiation back there. I'm going to have to work on that, I think, before the painting's going to be where I really want it. Differentiation between this bank of trees here and the shape back there. If you look in the reference photograph there, it's not there. I mean, it's just not there enough. So I've got to make that up as an artist. I've got to figure out the right balance to make that work. So, but what I can do is maybe go, and so I have scratchy paint in the background, and as I get into this foreground tree, not only can I increase the chroma and the yellows and the oranges and stuff in there, I can start to apply thicker paint if I choose, and that will also give the viewer the visual cue that must be closer because I can see more of it. I can feel it. And so now I can decide which branches to accentuate and which ones to leave alone. Add a little red into here. Yeah, that's fun to look at. So probably what I'll need to do is add some cooler tones and lighter and put them behind that tree and carve into it when I'm ready to do that. Actually, I made that. So I need a dark to kind of indicate the trunk. But a lot of times that dark in the pine tree is going to be warm because that bark is kind of reddish. And this is where I can come in with a super dark and add some punch in that tree. Which can be tough sometimes when you have any bit of white on your palette, then to find some real estate that's really clean and doesn't have the white in it. So a juxtaposition here of that really dark note here, the really light note there. I've got really good linear flow that I'm liking. I think maybe, well, let's try it. I'll put some of this in now. Maybe this ground plane here is a, kind of a little bit lighter colored, reddish brown maybe. So, and I'm dragging that paint across there. It's giving me a really nice feel to that. And with that, then I can kind of point out to the viewer that there's some sagebrush in here. Now I'll lighten that up a little more, maybe put some orange. Actually, I think I'm going to stick with the alizarin permanent because that's a nice cool color, but it's a red and it's going to counter some of that, all of this kind of green in here. Really nice. Okay. And then, of course, which I haven't been doing, but I'll take this out again. This is the back end of a paintbrush I cut down. It was just too long for my backpack. And then I ran the end of it into a pencil sharpener. So really pretty easy to do, but it gives me enough of a little writing implement here, and I can use that to to kind of scrape out some grasses and whatever might be happening. That can be fun too. It's a little bit easy to overdo that, so be careful of that. But it is nice in some areas to just use and rough the surface up a little bit there. You just don't want a bunch of things that repeat. I don't like that, so I'll just use my finger and get rid of them. Gave them the finger. Oh, I got a poor sense of humor, I'm sorry. Okay, yeah, I think what I'm going to do with this painting now is I'm going to let that dry, because the finishing touches I want to put on here are going to be cooling and dragging some blues over this background mountain and defining this tree line a little bit more. Actually, let me show you. I'm going to work on we'll wrap up here in just a second, but I'm going to take a little bit of this white here. It's a warm white. I just got a little bead on the edge of my palette knife there. And, these aspen have trunks on them, which I can start to put in a little bit. And wow, I mean, just that little bit of putting those in really leads the viewer to understand that, there's a bank of trees there, bank of aspen. And then what I kind of like to do sometimes with that is it leaves little blobs of paint, so I'll wipe the blade off on my palette knife, and then I'll just take the blade and pull through some of that little bead of paint, just a little bit, and pull it off to the sides, and it looks like branches. Pretty easy. Just don't overdo it. And it looks good. The other thing I can do is just pick up some paint of the color that I want, and I can apply some of that then in some thicker variation. This is a little too green, but I'll show you. Just pulling some of that color down is a nice way to add some interest in here, because you kind of get a very interesting mark. So that was a little too much there. I can scrape some of it off. I can bring in and randomize some of this. I can scrape some of this off that I may not like, mess with this edge. I could go in with the dark now and maybe put a little bit of that in. And try not to overwork it, but just with some little blobs of color like that and some thicker areas of paint, you can add to the mystery and the visual experience, because not only am I adding little areas of color, but I just put down some thicker blobs of paint that'll catch light in different ways from different angles as the viewer's looking at it. And so the painting kind of changes as they move around, visually looking at the painting from left to right, and the light changes on it, on those raised surfaces. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there. I'm going to definitely need to lighten and cool some of the areas in that mountain there. I will probably build out the tops of these sage a little bit more here and set this tree. And I want this tree to, I want you to know that tree's there. I'm not so sure if it's as defined as I would like it, but I don't want to define it too much. I'm not going to do anything with the mountain. And I might scumble on a little bit more of those blues to this color here, this warmer color in the sky. I think I'm going to leave this bank of clouds very abstracted and flat. I really like the tone and the coolness of that shape. And I think it's a nice counterbalance to the details. It's quiet and it's a nice counterbalance to the rest of the painting. So I will end there. Let me switch back over to the camera real quick and I'll wrap up. So thanks for joining me again tonight. I think this painting is going to be successful. So I feel like it's still 90% there. And painting alla prima is difficult because move the microphone closer here. Painting alla prima can be difficult because you can't get all of the effects wet into wet. And that's okay. So, do the best you can. And if you need to let it dry and then go back in, then that's fine too. The danger of going back into a painting later is that you end up repainting the whole thing because one mark leads to another and et cetera. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to make good art. So if I always just set a timer and say it's got to be done at this time and it's not where I want it, where does that leave me? I'm not going to improve, right? I'll always get to a certain point. So, go into it fearlessly, try to finish paintings. And if you lose a few, you lose a few. You'll always learn something from it. Not sure what I'll do next week. I do have some old paintings that I stopped and I sanded over and started again. And I thought maybe I'll pull one of those out and finish working on it. That's a really pleasing surface to paint on, an old painting, if you kind of sand it down a little bit. We'll talk about the precautions you need to take health-wise when doing that, but I might do that one of these times here pretty soon. I'll probably do a sunset as well. I've gotten a couple of requests for that, so I'll look for a good reference on that. Jim, Lester, hey, thanks for joining, buddy. Good to see you here. Really nice, Scott. Thank you. Lucky to stumble into this live. Good. I'm glad you're here. I've got a lot of others, so if you don't know where to find these after the live, they are recorded. You go to my channel homepage there, and you'll see videos, a tab for videos. But then next to it, you'll see a tab for live, and you'll be able to see all of these. I go back in as I get time, and then I shorten these up a little bit on the front end and clean them up. So, but you still get the whole demo, and you can watch those anytime. So that's it. I'll wrap it up there. And oh yes, so Kat's asking about workshops. I am going to have a workshop in June in Winter Park area of Colorado. It's beautiful, and depending on who's interested in that, I'll customize the content to your level. And I can cover a wide range of levels. So my goal in workshops is always to meet the person where they're at and help them get to that next level. I know that's kind of, you hear that a lot, but it's really important because if I'm teaching at too high a level, you don't even understand some of the things. And I don't want it to be frustrating. I want it to be a fun experience, and we always have a great time. So we build some good relationships that last and have a lot of fun. And Yeah, so if you're interested in that, let me know. I'll make sure you get on kind of the front end of that and get a spot if you were serious about coming out to Colorado, wherever you're at. Again, June, Winter Park, you can look it up. Beautiful scenery, and we'd have a great time. Probably really great weather then, too. So that's it. I'll wrap it up here. Thanks again for joining me. And if you have other questions that come up, message me or whatever. And as these dry, I'll post them on my website and on social media, so you'll see the finished painting. Thanks again. Hey, everybody, have a good night. Bye-bye.